Hello and welcome to Heartlight Vedic Astrology. Today I was going to talk about the new moon coming up, Amavasya, on the 13th of November. And it seems like the theme for this new moon is shift your mind to find harmony. So let's go ahead. The information presented here is for educational purposes only and should not be considered medical, financial, professional, or life advice of any kind. If you are in need, please contact an appropriate professional for support. You might take a minute or two to read the rest of this disclaimer. If you're new to Vedic astrology or Jyotish or my videos, all of my teaching videos on the subject are in my concepts playlist. Wherever you see a double asterisk in one of my talks, that means there's a teaching video on that subject. So you can go hunt it down if that's of interest. Usually when I do these interpretation videos, I'm integrating a lot of concepts. And so, again, if you're a beginner or you're a little fuzzy on the concepts, you might look at these particular videos because they're the foundational videos for most of the interpretation videos that I do. So they are North, South, East Indian scale charts, Introduction to Navigating a Birth Chart, the Lugna, Ascendant, Rising Sign, First House. They all mean the same thing. Introduction to the constellations or Rashis, planetary aspects, natural, benefic, and malefic planets or grahas, nakshatras or lunar mansions. Also, I have a whole playlist on each of the planets, classic planets of Jyotish. Those are all in my planets grahas playlist. And also, you might look at my yogas, planetary combinations playlist because I'll be talking about a couple of them today. Parivartana yoga or exchange of houses, as well as Kala Sarpa yoga, the ambition combination, which is a video I just put out a few days ago. So that's available to you now as well. All right, so let's take a look at the chart. So again, new moon, Amavasya, 13th of November. That's going to be at 4:28 in the morning, Eastern Standard Time. And the day lord is going to be sun, and the hora lord is also sun. So that's already significant because the sun significates or symbolizes the soul, the mission, the purpose, deep. Um, Really deep stuff. It's also general health and well-being, so and general vitality. So that's a pretty already deep, but we were already seeing some deep symbolism here. The Lugna nakshatra or lunar mansion for this horoscope here is Chitra. Chitra is symbolized by a gemstone, and so because of the different facets of the gemstone, you can think about structure. So structure in general is important here. And the deity associated with the Chitra nakshatra is the celestial architect. So again, more structure and building, that sort of thing. The moon nakshatra in this horoscope is in Vishaka, and Vishaka is all about it's about victory, um, and actually victory at any cost. So there could be an edge to this type of victory, and there can be collateral damage associated with this type of victory, whether it's resources, material resources, or relationships, that sort of thing. And because the moon is is new and just starting a new cycle, the moon is actually weak. We consider a new moon weak because it's not full of light, not kind of luscious and juicy, and like a full moon is. Um, And so this cycle, it looks like, especially because the moon is in the Lugna here, the rising sign, this is all about restructuring the mind and also the purpose and also the mission and also the general vitality of somebody. Because again, we're already seeing sun and moon here in Vishaka. Yeah. Um, So let's see. And actually, I put the word later on, but I'll just mention it now since we're sort of here. Is that when you have the sun, the moon, and the lugna all lined up like this, we call it a Sudarshan lugna. And what this means is that the lugna symbolizes the physical body, the moon symbolizes the mental body and emotional body, and the sun represents the soul. So when you have this sort of formation, that's considered to be quite powerful because it means that your physical actions, your mental, emotional actions, and your kind of soul drive are all lined up So there's a lot of power here, potentially. Again, there are some issues as well because, again, the moon is new, but again, it looks like there's a new kind of structure in the mind that's forming here. The sun also represents executive leadership, and it's there with Mars, which is about the commander in chief. So there's a lot of leadership of self and others in this chart already. Right. So let's get back to the notes here so I can go through this more systematically. Otherwise, the energy of the chart, kind of takes me on these kind of here and there, and it may not seem quite so. There might not be so much flow. So let's try to get back here. So the Dasha sequence, or not the Dasha sequence, but the Dasha period associated with this chart is Jupiter, Ketu, Mercury, Saturn. All right. So Jupiter is oration, speaking, law, justice, karma, spirituality, teaching. K2 is a very erratic and kind of release and separation type energy. Mercury is the student. So if Jupiter is the teacher, Mercury is the student. Mercury is also about business, communication, travel. And then Saturn is also about structure, antiquity, and isolation. So we have three planets here, K2, Mercury, and Saturn, which are all kind of isolating type planets for different reasons. K2 is sort of like, done with that. Saturn's about um, old school ways and structure. And Mercury is if somebody has a strong Mercury, they can very much be in their head. So what I see from this is that already from the Dasha period is that there's a seeking of wise counsel, because Jupiter's the spiritual counselor, spiritual counselor, to shift the mindset, because there's learning involved here. There's Jupiter, Mercury, and it might be a release of old ways of thinking and restructuring of ways of thinking, is what we're seeing here. Okay, now we want to take this horoscope in context of sort of real life. Um, so even though the new moon is happening on the 13th November, and this particular Dasha period is Jupiter, K2, Mercury, Saturn at the time of this chart, that is shifting very quickly on November 15th. We're shifting from Jupiter, K2, Mercury, Saturn to Jupiter, Venus, 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 which is a very strong shift, both energetically as well as planetary strength. Because Venus is almost the opposite energy of K2, Mercury, Saturn. Venus is a planet that symbolizes compassion, finer things of life, socializing, harmony, diplomacy. So there's going to be a big shift happening, looks like after this new moon, or maybe because of this new moon. And so when the 15th comes around and we shift to Jupiter, Venus, 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 it's almost like a recovery of strength or self, because Venus, you'll see this kind of twisted lavender arrow in the horoscope. Venus currently, at the time of this chart, is in the 12th house of loss, isolation, retreat, possibly, especially with K2 being there. And so Venus is going to shift into its own sign, into Libra, into this Lagna at the end of the month. And so we're almost getting a preview of that. Yeah, we're getting that shift, energetic shift first, and then the physical shift will looks like it's going to happen at the end of the month. And so when Venus comes into its own sign in the Lagna, there's going to be a recovery of strength, recovery of self, because those are the things indicated by the first house. The other thing in terms of context is that Diwali is being celebrated currently with a kind of final day of celebration on the 12th on Sunday. Diwali is, even if you don't celebrate or don't believe in it, just to understand the symbolism of it is that Lakshmi, it's symbolism of the goddess Lakshmi, who's considered the goddess of wealth and fertility. I think most of the depictions of Lakshmi tend to be centered more on her ability to deliver, or her blessings of material wealth in terms of like literally money, literally possessions, house, car, clothes, also material things such as physical people like family, children, that sort of thing, relationships. And so, again, she's celebrated here. But I think a lot of the depictions of Lakshmi tend to overlook That she's not just the goddess of kind of delivering the goodies, which are great, can be great. But the thing is, it's like, what do what kinds of things do these goodies bring to your life? Yeah. I mean, she might bring a relationship to your life, but is that a happy relationship? Is it a harmonious relationship? She might bring children to your life, but do you get along well with your children? Is it a harmonious relationship? Are you able to impart your parental guidance on them and it works? You can help guide this young person as they develop, into an adult human being and provide for them, that sort of thing. I mean, there are plenty of children who have all sorts of. I used to work with special needs children. I've worked with all kinds of kids, and some kids they're very, very difficult, very unstable, either mentally or emotionally, and it's kind of a nightmare for parents. So, again, material wealth, but part of that, I think part of, again, what Lakshmi truly represents is the harmony and being able to develop fruit or good things from these material things. Even money. I mean, people say, "Oh yeah, load me up with money," but a lot of people find that money is a burden because they don't really know people's true intentions for socializing with them. Is it just because of their wealth and status, or is it because they truly like and appreciate this person? Yeah. So there's a deeper meaning, I think, to Lakshmi than what I see her generally depicted as. And that's important also for this horoscope and the interpretation of this horoscope as again, I've come across it or I've gone through it. All right, so that's kind of the background or kind of the base here. Let's start going through the chart. So in the Lugna, the top square here, top diamond, this is the North Indian style chart if you're not familiar. The dot diamond is the Lugna, also known as the ascendant, rising sign, or first house. Excuse me. And it happens to be a Libra or Tula, as it's known in Sanskrit, Lugna. Okay. Libra is a movable air sign. Mm. What's that mean? It's a very movable signs tend to be very active, and air signs tend to be very much of the mind, like an idea person. Okay. Again, I already mentioned that this happens to be a Sudarshan Lugna because we have the sun, moon, and the Lugna all lined up. And so that alone, even though the moon is weak because it's new, and even though the sun is actually debilitated in Libra, that still gives, if this was a person, this still gives this person or at this moment in time strength because it means, again, there's an alignment between body, mind, heart, and soul. And that alone will kind of reduce drag, so to speak, because your physical actions and your soul drive and your emotions are not moving in different directions. It's kind of like getting all your horses lined up to move the carriage forward. There's more power and again less drag there. Yeah. So we do have a new moon. Again, new moons are considered weak, but it's also the release of the old and the beginning of a new cycle, especially in regards to the mind and the emotional mind. Mars in this chart is there also in the Lugna, and Mars is combust, meaning that the Mars is so close to the sun that essentially it's eclipsed by the sun because the light of the sun eclipses Mars. And what that means is that the energy of Mars can be a very initiative planet, also erratic, leader planet, but kind of more of a hands-on leadership. Again, general energies of Mars, fiery, transformative energy. But you won't see those external qualities of Mars because it's combust, but you'll feel them more internally. So this drive for initiative, change, or whatever might be going on here, and again, we not only have Mars as a fire sign, but Sun as a fire sign together. So there's a lot of fire in this Lugna, a lot of fire in this person, both internally and externally. So this could make for a very aggressive person, definitely like a lot of force or push. Okay. But again, sun is debilitated, moon is weak, Mars is combust. So there's some issues here with like getting those horses to drive forward. And it may be more of an internal job where somebody's frustrated with themselves. It could be that somebody's also very frustrated with their circumstances because they can't get, even though there's all this drive and action and effort, they can't get the horses to drive forward. Excuse me. So the other thing is that Moon, Mars, and Sun are all in Vishaka nakshatra. Vishaka nakshatra, again, sorry, I got to remember not to drink milk before I do one of these talks. Keep drinking water, but it doesn't seem to be enough. Anyway, Moon, Mars, and Sun are all in Vishaka nakshatra. Nakshatra is nakshatra symbolizes a victory gate, but again, at all costs. So it's sort of like the ends justify the means, and it may be more such a strong goal orientation, especially when we have Mars, Sun, driving with their fiery energy. This thing, whatever this thing is, we haven't gotten into it. Um, uh, it can be, it might even be that somebody does meet their goal, but they've lost a lot along the way getting there. The other thing is that we have an aspect by Jupiter. Jupiter's retrograde in Aries at the time of this chart. And Aries, excuse me, Jupiter is retrograde. That's going to bring in even more kind of expansion of this and drive of this, enthusiasm of this. And Jupiter's in Bharani nakshatra. Bharani nakshatra is symbolized by a womb. So there's this energy of Bharani of like life and death and turning of cycles. So even more turning of cycles here. But you have Jupiter representing life and people. So it's about bringing life to something. So again, even more, I think, frustration. Somebody might really be feeling like they're spinning their wheels, not getting anywhere with this type of energy. The other thing to note is that Jupiter is the Aviyogi in this chart. The Aviyogi is the planet that symbolizes, it can symbolize lack of wealth. Yeah, so that's starting to, so now we're starting to get more energies integrated here. So it looks like there's some frustration with wealth here. So again, with this combination, a lot of irritation, frustration, anger, conflict, even because Mars and Sun, when they're not, in their best condition, can be anger, irritation, that sort of thing, violence, even. And it seems like the inability to manifest in the material world, because the seventh house here, um, uh, the Lord of the seventh house is Mars. Mars is combust. So relationships, it might be hard to manifest relationships, either personal or professional. The moon is the lord of the 10th house of career and status, and that's new moon with these, malefic planets on it. So career is problematic. And then the thing is that sun is debilitated, and the sun is the lord of the 11th house of income and also group. So looks like there's frustration around income, and again, more relationships, more of like public groups and clubs and things like that. Social support. Um, yeah, so despite a lot of effort and enthusiasm, there was kind of like prolonged labor delivery. And there's a wanting or a drive to lead and charge forward, but there's a feeling of being ineffective and spinning wheels, pushing too hard, and through all of this effort, actually causing issue for self and others because of the Vishaka energy. All right, there's so much drive and push to reach the goal, but there's fallout from it. Um, this could also mean ups and downs of business here, um, because we have not only Mars and Sun aspecting into the seventh house of independent business, but we have Saturn aspecting from the fifth house onto the seventh house. Saturn is in its own house, so it's Swa, it's strong that way. Saturn happens to be in the nakshatra of Dhanistha at the time of this chart, which is about establishing rhythms, establishing patterns, flow. But Saturn is debilitated in Aries. So again, there's this like, and Saturn also represents delays and obstacles. So there might be especially a real push um, for establishing a business besides relationships, but a business or getting a business to go. But there's delays and obstacles, and so more frustration. Let's see. There can also be charitable nature to this person, partly because the Lugnatia, which is Venus, Lugnatia is the ruler of the chart. That's a very compassionate, hospitable planet, and it's gone to the 12th house of loss. Um, but because it's Venus is a benefic planet, it might be a loss through charitable efforts and giving to, especially here in this chart, foreign places like maybe children overseas, that sort of thing. It could also be because K2 represents things like sudden upsets, that sort of thing. It might be places that have experienced loss or devastation suddenly, like through um, hurricanes and earthquakes, natural disasters, and but also possibly war, because unfortunately there's a lot of that going on at the moment. Um, yeah, so that's kind of, again, a little bit more of the general picture here with the chart. But let's talk about the lignation a little bit more. So Venus in this chart is in the 12th house. We don't generally like to see the lugna in the 12th house because it can mean that somebody's actually isolating or feels isolated. Um, it can also mean that they're very interested in foreign things, which is very possible here because we also have K2, which is a planet that represents foreign things in the 12th house with K2. But this K2 energy, this kind of also brings an unusual quality. So it might bring kind of a quirkiness or kind of eccentric-ish kind of energy to Venus, the native of the chart. Venus is also debilitated in this chart because it's in Virgo. And Venus is in the nakshatra of Hasta. Hasta is represented by a hand. So again, we get this, the hand and this nakshatra represents like hands-on, right? So again, we're getting this energy of not being able to create physically like material things that are desired by this native. Um, there is some support here though, because the 12th lord is Mercury, and Mercury happens to be an Anuradha. Anuradha is also is the actually nakshatra right after Vishaka. There's a very big difference between the two energies. Vishaka is more about again victory at all costs. Anuradha though is about victory through building relationships and supporting others and collaboration. So that's a huge shift between the energies. And so even though Venus is in the 12th house and it's with K2, and we've got malefics on the Lugna and we've got malefics on the Lugnatia, which generally is not desirable um, because it can cause a lot of havoc for the native. And again, especially with Venus going to the 12th house, like just not feeling effective and feeling like no matter what you try to accomplish, there's no real fruit that comes from that. Um, but luckily, I think because because Mercury is the lord of the 12th house and Mercury's an Anuradha, there's hope here. Because again, the mind, Mercury represents the rational mind, thinking decisions, communication, and it's in the second house of oral communication. This might be that there's oral communication here, conversation, looking to build bridges, looking to network, looking to create win-win solutions rather than it's you or me here, win or lose, one or the other. Um, Mercury is there, so the mind is in a good place. Communication's in a good place. And Venus is going to be shifting out of this Virgo 12th house position in a couple weeks here. besides the fact that, again, with the Dasha period, we're shifting from K2 Mercury Saturn. So again, that's not necessarily bad. It might be a bit, this person might be a bit detached or isolated right now. His K2 is going to be active in the 12th house of loss retreat. Mercury is active, which isn't so bad because Mercury, I think, is in a good position here, especially regards to communication. And Saturn is also active, and Saturn happens to be aspecting Mercury. So again, we're getting restructuring of mercurial energy, decisions, communication, analytical mind, that sort of thing, looking to humanize a bit rather than just be goal oriented. It's like, how does this work for humans involved, self and others? Yeah. Um, so it's about, especially with this Jupiter K2 Mercury Saturn energy, it's about kind of taking a step back and rethinking things. Are my thoughts are productive? Are my thoughts effective? Or is my communication effective? Am I creating what I want through my decisions, my thoughts, my words, both internally, self-talk, as well as externally with others? Yeah. So this looks like just a more of a temporary step back to regather, regroup, um, and do things in a different way, an unusual way. Because again, K2 brings this energy of unusualness, foreignness, that sort of thing, especially in the 12th house of retreat. This could be somebody literally going on retreat or meditating or that sort of thing, to again get some new perspective here that's going to be more productive moving forward. So yeah, I think that's all here in the notes. Your native partner isolated, yeah, away from others, meditation retreat, seeking alternative methods and long-term solutions. Because again, Saturn's involved here. Saturn's a slow-moving planet. Those are about long cycles of Saturn. So especially, it looks like what's happening here is that taking the step back is giving this person some time and space to rethink their thoughts, actually, or create some new thoughts, or work with some new thoughts here. That's going to be more productive because they're so frustrated. They're like, I got to try something new. That's what I'm seeing here. And they're purifying their thoughts and speech, especially if they haven't had, internal thoughts and speech that are um, upbeat and supportive of self. I mean, that's gonna filter out into their speech communications and decisions with other people as well. It's about cleaning all that up, especially because Mercury is kind of it's about details. It's a detail-oriented planet. Um, this might also be this Venus K2 in the 12th house. This might also be about could even involve something like feng shui or Vastu Shastra. So cleaning up or reorganizing energy spaces, or physical spaces to shift energy, something alternative like that. So even though Venus is retreating here, it looks like it's really about taking a step back to speed up. Yeah. The other thing to note here, again, seems like a temporary situation because both Sun and Mars, you can see they're at the end of the nakshatra, or at the end of the Rashi constellation here. They're both shifting into Scorpio on the 16th of November. So you see in the next few days after this moment in time, things are going to cool off a bit because all that fiery energy, Mars and Sun, and this goal-driven, attitude is going to shift. So there's going to be less fire. And that's not necessarily a bad thing because, again, in a few days, not on the 16th, but a few days after the 16th, Mars and Sun are going to start following Mercury into this Anuradha nakshatra. So first the mind, clarifying the mind, getting that in a good space, and then the actions and lining with the soul and all that will happen. So let's look at the second house here. Mercury's there. Again, I mentioned already effective, successful speech, willing to help others, that sort of thing. especially those close to the nature, because the second house represents not only family, like nuclear family, extended family, but people who are like family, so like friends, for example. But again, there's this quiet time because of Venus in the 12th house of K2. And also with the strong Saturn aspecting Mercury, there's a deep restructuring. And it's slow. It's slower than this person likes. I'm pretty sure because again, with all this fire, Mars and Saturn, Sun in the first house, fiery people. They've got no time to waste. They want to get there yesterday. So, despite the sense of urgency here, there's a slow development of shifting, especially the mind first, to start moving into flow and moving into harmony. The third house here, it's aspected by Jupiter. And Jupiter's is retrograde, so it's strong, and it's gonna aspect its own house in the third bhava here. So we're looking at why spiritual communication, and so there's going to be good communication here with Mercury in the second house of oral communication, and Jupiter here, and aspecting the third house of written communication. So there's a lot of good communication starting to flow from this moment. The fourth house, we have this combust Mars aspecting fourth house here. So there can be conflict at home. Mars is again can be a tumultuous planet, and so even though it may not be obvious, because again Mars is combust, um, some of this conflict is spilling into the home and the family line. This could also indicate generational changes. Luckily, Mars is strong in Capricorn, which is part of this fourth house in this chart. So even though there may be some conflict or some rumbling going on, if not outward conflict, this shift, I think, is going to produce powerful and important changes and good changes moving forward, even if it's a little bit uncomfortable at the moment. This slide here, it's basically the same, except I'm going through the notes on the right are different because I'm going through the other houses. So the fifth house, we have the strong Saturn, Swa, in its own house in Aquarius, Dhanistha. So this is a high-minded placement, constellation Rashi, and it's about long-term changes here. How do we think about things in a different way? Take things up a notch to shift the energies here. And the Saturn is aspecting in the seventh house of, again, independent businesses, independent business and relationships, especially relationship with spouse or spouse-like partner. But there can also be delays. So there's change happening, again, not as fast as this person would like. The other thing is Saturn is aspecting the 11th house of clubs, groups, societies, and income. So the shift that's being attempted is not only going to affect material things like income, but relationships. Yeah. The sixth house here we have Rahu and Revati. Um, that's actually kind of nice because Revati is a pretty gentle energy. It's about hospitality, traveling. It can also be endings here. Um, So I can see actually like ending or easing up of animosity between people. Like if there are relationships where it seems like, oh, this person's against me, they seem almost sort of like an enemy. Rahu here can indicate that there's an easing of that or an ending of that, and that there's a drive to end the animosity. That's the other thing. Seventh house, we have Jupiter retrograde strong. We have the Swa Saturn aspecting here. We have a new moon aspecting here. Swa combust Mars exalted. Oh, that's the thing is Mars, when Mars aspects here, Mars is aspecting to its own house. That's going to make Mars strong. That's going to be a positive influence, even though it's going to be fiery. And the sun, it's aspecting here, that's exalted in Aries. So there's actually a lot of success happening in the seventh house of relationships with partner. But again, there's an edge to it. And there's like so much kind of focus and drive towards goal that people's feelings and getting people on board with this effort, that may be lacking here. All of that, positive energy from Mars and Sun, though, in the seventh house, that could mean that the partner is very successful at this moment, and so they're flying fast, so they're in top gear, fifth or sixth gear, driving forward because for them, the fourth house in this chart is the 10th house for them. There's a lot of drive and success for the partner here with career. And there's a Saturn in there. Again, it's 11th house from the 7th house, income. So the partner might be really doing well with career and income. And because this particular person is frustrated, mm, even that, just the energies that they're both experiencing, even if they're well meaning towards each other, can be an issue because this person might be like, wow, I mean, my partner is like killing it right now, they're doing great, and I'm like spinning my wheels. So there can be some comparison or even competition because again, all this fiery energy, that's competitive energy. Yeah. It doesn't have to be negative. It's just even if people are well meaning, they're just like, hey, what about me? That sort of thing. And then the partner, because the partner's really doing well right now, the partner might be giving advice to this native of, just go and do it, just, and so it's kind of more motivational advice. Like just, do it, I don't know, call more people or put out more applications or whatever it is that they're doing. Rather than coming from like a more of an emotional perspective, like you can do it. It's not like go do it. It's you can do it. You've got this. It's what you want. Like, really kind of bolstering the emotional side here because the emotions are faltering here, right? The two emotional planets, we've got Moon in the Lagna, new, so it's not strong. And we have Venus, which is the other emotional planet, in the 12th house of isolation, and it's debilitated with Ketu. Um, and both the Lagna and the Lagnatia are challenged right now. So it looks like this person needs more emotional support more than like, practical support. Um, and Yeah, there might also be misinterpretation here between the native and the partner because the Venus represents partner as a planet. And for the seventh house person, so for the partner, Venus, their partner, so the native, has gone to this sixth house of enemies. Yeah, so there might be a misunderstanding or misinterpretation here. Again, some static on the line that I think even though these people are well meaning, they might be at odds because they're just experiencing very different energies related to work and money. So that can be an issue. The eighth house here is aspected by Mercury, which is great because that means that this Mercury and Anuradha, this victory by collaborating energy is also in the second house of the partner. So better communication, compassionate communication, wanting to talk and communicate with family, loved ones, close people. That's there. So they both have that in common, which is good. Mars is also here. So that's going to make things a little bit more fiery for the partner more than, well, actually, for the partner, you have Mercury and Mars. So the partner might want to speed up the communication. And then you have Mercury, Saturn for the native in their second house. So that's going to be a slower communication. So I think they're both well meaning with speech and communication conversations, but this partner is on fire right now. So they want to kind of hurry it up with communications. Don't take that personally. That's just kind of the energy that they're in. Um, But again, new thoughts, communications on success. Like I don't know, for some reason that book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, comes to mind. That just the title of that book, not the book itself, but that's kind of that seems like it would be a productive conversation to have. Is how do we not only reach goals and our goals together, if we're talking about spouse here specifically, but it looks like it's more than just a spouse. It looks like a lot of relationships. Family, home, group, society. It looks like a lot of relationships are affected, business partners. Um, how do we win and bring people with us? How do we win and bring people on board? Or how do we win by bringing people on board? That sort of thing. Yeah. So the ninth house, the ninth lord is Mercury, which is great. So I think that's going to bring some helpful energy, communication coming from authority figures, father figures, and the spiritual community generally. And again, just especially the spiritual community, that really lit up for me. Because again, it seems like part of the shift that needs to happen is taking a step back, reframing the mindsets in new way, alternative way, spiritual way. And that's what's going to bring this forward. That's what's going to bring success here. And again, it's also about redefining success of not just reaching the goal, but, crossing that finish line with other people. The 10th house here, I mentioned the 10th lord, which is that new moon. It's afflicted. So there's going to be a lot of frustration, lack of public support as well, because the moon represents public. And then we see the same for the 11th house. The 11th lord is this debilitated sun. And especially the 11th house here is Leo. Leo is all about stage. So again, it's public support, obvious support. And then we have the Swa Saturn, strong Saturn aspecting here. So there's delays, obstacles with support, and also income. So it's just more of the same. And then the 12th house I mentioned, it's like the native, the Lagnatia, Venus is detaching to review, recover. But again, luckily, Venus is entering into, once it has a chance to do this for, looks like a couple of weeks here, Venus is entering Libra on the 29th of November. So that's going to bring strength back, strength of personality, strength of body, because this looks like it's, yeah, pretty frustrating what's going on here. It's probably really depleting this person. Especially because the sun is debilitated. Sun indicates just vital energy, general health and well-being, that sort of thing. So it's taking a toll on this person. So the thing is, it looks like they're going to recover, which is nice. But let's take a deeper look and look at some of the subzodiacs, also known as the amshas or the divisional charts, to really see if there's more. So let's look at work and income first, since we mentioned that's, again, kind of the field. I'm not sure this is really the main issue. I think it's just the circumstances that are bringing this more deeper long-term internal change. It's shedding light on the internal, deeper long-term internal changes that will be beneficial for the person. So, just as a reminder, the Dasha period at the beginning is Jupiter, K2, Mercury, Saturn. And then the 15th of November, that's switching to Jupiter, Venus, Venus, Venus. So I circled those planets so we can look at where they are and how they shift in the next couple of days after this time period. So this first chart here at the top, this is the Dashamsha, or the D10. Excuse me. And the D10 is related to career, fame, and status. So what's interesting here is that you have the same lugna. It's also a Libra Tula lugna, rising sign. So when you have a subzodiac that has the same lugna as the natal chart, then that indicates that this chart is important. So career, fame, status. Luckily, all of the planets you can see, Jupiter, K2, Mercury, Saturn, as well as Venus, all of these planets are in positive houses. So I don't think that work or status, fame is really so much of an issue, but I think there's a shift here from some static, excuse me, and delays to better energy. But I still think this is important because by making the shift in terms of your, or the person's daily activity, daily focus, and doing that in a different way, then the other things come, right? Money, more money comes, more better money comes, or better relationships comes. Again, if you do this internal shift. So that's important. The other thing is that you have a Kala Sarpa yoga like pattern, right? I just did a video on that. So you have most of the planets on one side of the Rahu Ketu axis. So there's going to be drive and ambition here, and driving towards Rahu. So Rahu again is public support, as well as income. So that's on the table. Yeah. The other thing that's interesting about this 11th house of this Dashamsha here is you have Jupiter, Rahu, and Venus all together. And that might sound kind of good, but when we look at the amshas or subzodiacs, we also include soul enemies. You don't use soul enemies in the natal chart. But here, Jupiter is a soul enemy of Venus, and Venus is a soul enemy of Rahu. So there's still, even though Jupiter and Venus are benefic planets, and that'll smooth things over, there's still going to be a bit of hiddenness here, and there's still going to be competition here. So I could see this being like trolls. Like, if this is somebody who's interested in doing some online thing, like somebody who's trolling you, whether it's online or in life, real life. Who just they may not be happy with you being happy. They may not be happy with your new success, that sort of thing. So there's always a few of those. I don't think they're gonna, again, once things shift to Jupiter, Venus, Venus, Venus. I think that's going to be a minor issue, if anything at all. But it won't be entirely smooth sailing. There'll be some stuff there. Saturn in this chart is debilitated, and that debilitated energy is in the 7th house of independent business and relationships, especially partner and business partnerships. So delays and obstacles there. Saturn also has Digbala in the 7th house, so it's an exaggerated Saturn. And Saturn is aspecting into the Lugna where it is exalted. And Mercury has Digbala in the Lugna. So again, we have Saturn on Mercury being a main theme, restructuring the thoughts, thinking better, thinking clearer, that sort of thing. Yeah, restructuring thoughts, decisions, communications, and again, also relationship with self and others. Because of the way we think and treat ourselves, it really we can't kind of help but treat and talk to people the way we talk to ourselves. Sometimes there can be a double standard. Sometimes, we're all that, and other people thing, or the other way around. That can be too, but I think this is about bringing all of that up. The 5th house here, we have K2. So again, seeking unusual alternative counsel. Because again, Jupiter and Venus aspect here, and they're the two counselors. Jupiter's spiritual counselor, Venus is the practical counselor. So finding some new way of doing things, but there is some it can be a little bit isolating, a little bit of a retreat there. Mars is debilitated, so Mars is still a bit weak. So that can mean not really knowing quite what to do. So that's why I think it's not necessarily a bad thing for this person to step back and rethink things. And once they get clear in their mind, then the actions will follow. The moon, we have a new moon here as well. So again, moon, emotional mind, a bit weak, the public support weak. So that's similar. So there's actually quite a few similarities to the natal chart here. But again, all the planets are positively placed. So I don't think this person is going through major shift or change with work. I think it's more of an inside job, getting clear. And then that repositioning, even if it's subtle, that's when, because again, we're going to shift from this Jupiter, Mercury, Saturn, K2 energy, where you can see all those planets are all over the chart, but especially over the 1-7 axis and the 5-11 axis. So getting counsel to improve things, to Jupiter, Venus, all in the 11th house, clubs, group, society, income. So the repositioning, I think, will pay off. And it will be mostly popular. It will go over well with others, and it will pay off financially. But again, there'll be a few trolls. So they make life interesting, I guess. So and then let's look at the Rudramsha here, the D11. So this is income as well as awards and elections. So what do we have here? Jupiter's in a negative house, Ketu's in a negative house. So there's some challenges here with income. Um, and it looks like this person's been struggling for a while because again, Jupiter and Ketu are the Mahadasha and then the first antra here. So it's been a haul for this person, and again, they're pushing to get this to go. So they're frustrated, and that's probably why they're tired because they're pushing up against these negative energy cycles. And then the thing is that the Jupiter is the Aviyogi. So again, the planet that represents dearth or lack of money, that sort of thing, and it's in a negative house. So yeah, so it looks like there's been some financial struggle going on, and it looks like it will continue, but it will improve once there will be some improvement once there's a shift into Jupiter, Venus, Venus, Venus on the 15th of November. There's also restructuring of income. We have Saturn in Aquarius in the 11th house here, as well as restructuring of the network. Right? Um, And let's see. And the Saturn is also Lord of the 10th house of career. So there's some restructuring there. And it's slow and it's durable reconstruction. It's not going to be a fast shift here. Um, we have Mercury in the 10th house of career. So works related to business, communication, travel, intellectual property, especially because the 10th house Lord is a Saturn in Aquarius. So I think whatever this person is doing, it's more on the it might involve computers or the internet or some kind of thought process, like intellectual property more than material property, that sort of thing. Venus, again, well placed in the ninth house of authority, father, guru, and satsang, so spiritual community. So again, this restructuring, especially when we move to this Jupiter-Venus period on the 15th of November, it's also about rethinking on a deeper level, like it's almost like spiritualizing all of this effort rather than just making money for the sake of money. It's like what's the use of this money? How am I going to spend this money? How am I going to use this money? What is this money going to support? Is it going to support benevolent things, or am I just going to it's not, again, not necessarily bad, but buy a bunch of stuff, go shopping. I mean, that's cool, but again, I think that this person is in a place where they're looking to go deeper and again align body, mind, spirit, soul. Um, that's the deep work here. Yeah, and also this Venus in the ninth house of satsang, the lord of the ninth house is Jupiter. So there's a relationship here between this Jupiter in the eighth house with the Venus in the ninth house, right? And because the eighth house represents usually things people aren't interested in or don't want, like chronic illness and that sort of thing. The eighth house also represents things like alternative things and esoteric and research, like Ayurveda, yoga, and Jyotish, even. So again, looks like the advisors here are really gonna be coming forward. Good counsel's coming forward with this shift into Venus Antra. So I don't think that money issue is going to be cleared up completely, but there'll be less strain, and the shift will be the deeper shift or the deeper work is about getting in alignment, true alignment, mind, body, spirit, soul, to get things moving forward. So let's look at people because again, partnerships and relationships came up a lot in the natal chart. So at the top here, we're looking at the Navamsha, the D9, which represents spouse relationships generally. So what's interesting, you'll see with the different amshas I'm going through for relationships, they're all Libra Lugna, which is pretty outstanding, significant. So again, whenever you have a subzodiac with the same rising sign as the natal chart, that means that chart's important. So again, all the uh, relationships here are all important. So again, Libra Lugna, significant. The themes here again, we have isolation retreat. We have K2 in the 12th house again. We have Saturn aspecting the second house or in the second house. So kind of recreating that. We have a new moon. What else do we have here? Yeah. So just the K2 in the 12th house. Again, more isolation retreats energy. New patterns of communication with Saturn in the second house. We have communication generally with partner because we have Mercury, which is bala, directional strength, and the Lugna. And we have Venus in the seventh house. So that's a Karkabhava Nasha. That's issues with spouse or partner. But they're mutually aspecting each other. So it's about communicating compassionately, and well-advised communication between the spouse and partner. And we're going to get more of that communication with when we shift the Dasha to the 15th of November. And again, Jupiter is in the 11th house of spiritualizing groups, income, wise counsel from partner, because Jupiter's aspecting into the 7th house. Jupiter's also aspecting the 5th house of counsel, but there'll be some pushback. Because Jupiter is the Aviyogi. And also, Jupiter is the sole enemy of Venus. So it won't be entirely smooth sailing here. Then we have the second chart here, the Drakena, D3 for siblings. Again, another Lugna Libra, or Libra Lugna. The K2's in a negative house, Mercury's in a negative house. So there's some issues here with communication, looks like. And the siblings may have been at odds for a while because K2 is the first entra here. And there can be issues with distance and communication because, again, Saturn, Mercury, K2, those are all kind of isolating planets or distant planets in different ways for different reasons. So we have Mercury in the 6th house of acute conditions and K2 in the 8th house of chronic conditions. So again, there might have been issues with siblings for going on for quite a while. But again, establishing a new intellectual framework, we have Saturn in Aquarius again. That's like the NASA scientist energy. And again, trying to get wise counsel here. We've got Jupiter in the 11th house again. But this is something that's siblings look like they are somebody who's anchored in tradition, specifically Indian spirituality. And that's because of the Saturn in Aquarius. Usually, when you find a strong Saturn, so Saturn in its own house of Capricorn or Aquarius, I've seen that tends to bring somebody to Indian culture for different reasons, like maybe it's yoga or Ayurveda or Jyotish. The other thing is the 5th house is not only the house of counseling, but it's also the house of yantra, tantra, mantra. So the siblings might be really chanting a lot, especially because we have Jupiter, the planet of oration, aspecting this house. But especially once we shift into this Jupiter-Venus period on the 15th, then you can see just Jupiter and Venus are well placed. So we're going to clear up some of this detachment or distance or delay. And Venus is going to bring, because it's Digbala in the 4th house, it's going to bring harmony back to the home and the family. So I think things are going to clear up pretty well with both the spouse and the siblings once we shift here. there's still some work that needs to be done. And again, it looks like the work that needs to be done is going to these alternative places or alternative mindsets and bringing those forward. And that's what's going to shift the relationship patterns here. Then if we look at more people, so now we're looking at the amsa subzodiac for children and then parents and grandparents. So at the top here, we have the saptamsha, the D7 for children. And let's see here. So Jupiter is well placed, but K2 is challenged, Saturn is challenged, and Mercury is well placed. And Venus is in a negative house, but at least it's swa, so that's going to be helpful once we shift to Jupiter, Venus. So this is going to be an ongoing thing for the kids, if there are kids involved here. But what I was seeing here, first of all, you have again, another Libra Lugna, makes it significant. But you're really recreating the natal chart in a lot of ways. You have Sun, Moon, Mars all on the 1-7 axis again. So all those planets are going to be in the Lugna again. You have a Kala Sarpa yoga. So you have this ambition yoga going across the 6-12 axis here. And the 6th house is about obvious enemies. The 12th house is about hidden enemies, and also 6th house is about acute issues, and the 12th house is about losses. So there's a lot of energy here about those issues. And what I was seeing here with the kids chart is that the children are observing the adults here, as they always do, and they're learning by example of how to handle leadership challenges of self and others from the native. Um, And they're learning to harness all this intense fire pit ambition energy because they have it the way that the native has it. Sun, Moon, Mars, it's all in the Lugna, the way it's like, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Yeah. I think what's different here though is that Venus has gone to the 8th house into its own sign. So it's this child or the children, I think what they're learning through watching the adults here is they're learning are picking up these new habits of going into meditation, going into retreat, finding those alternative thought processes or paradigms to help them move forward through challenging times and challenging relationships. That's what I'm saying here. And I think, again, if this is partially a kind of a partial chart for the children, this is actually going to serve the child because it looks like it's again, children or whatever, their role in life is to become thought leaders and communication leaders. So even though there's challenge for the children here, it's like they're going through the life course, the course of life in terms of how to deal with these things, because these are a lot of these things you can't read about in books. You can only learn through watching others and observing others and learning through doing. Yeah. So um challenging for children, but I think in the long term, this challenge is going to serve these children moving forward because they're going to, instead of muddling through and being challenged and all this, and like, somehow through luck or whatever, finding some alternative way of thinking about things. I think these kids are going to be anchored in alternative thought processes that are going to serve them moving forward. And not only that, but they're going to be leading other people through that sort of thing. So, not all bad in terms of the kids, although the kids might be a little bit challenged right now. Then we have the Dwadashamsha, the D12 for parents and grandparents. The Lugna again, Libra, significant. This energy in this chart's a bit different. When you look at where Jupiter is, Jupiter's in the 12th house, and you have Mercury in the 6th house, you have K2 and Saturn here. So there is a parivartana between Jupiter and Mercury. That's good. That's going to make them both stronger because they're going back to their own houses. But you can see Mercury and Jupiter communication. It's challenging communicating here with children. Jupiter also represents children. So the parents might be challenged by the situation. And it looks like the parents are a bit old school because Saturn is in the Seventh house, there's bala there, directional strength, but it's debilitated. So, that's typical. I mean, parents, grandparents, I mean, that's that's how they grew up and that's what worked for them. So they might be a bit old school in terms of their methods for wanting to improve, way of improving the situation. Although I'm sure that they do want to improve things. But again, their way of doing things may not fit or be appropriate for the native here. And so just that there might be some discussions there about like how to go about things. So they're offering their advice in the way that they know best, but I think there's some learning to be done and had by the parents and grandparents as well. Um, um, there can be with K2 in the fifth house, or sorry, not the fifth house, the 11th house, which is ruled by the fifth zodiac sign of Leo. And the moon is there. The moon represents public, sun represents kind of a reputation generally. And sun is in its own house. So there's strength there, but there's this K2 energy. So there's this disruption of income as well as public support, reputation, that sort of thing. So I think that's a concern for the parents, grandparents, because there is a shakeup going on here, and they're worried about that. But again, I think it's more about, again, just the evolution of life, family, relationships, that sort of thing. There's a natural growth, even when you lay down a lot of concrete or asphalt, grass will grow up through the cracks. It's like that. You can't stop that. Excuse me. You can't stop that evolution process, natural evolution process. Excuse me. But again, what the parents and grandparents are looking for, where's Venus? Venus has gone to the fourth house of family and generational line. So they want to reestablish harmony here in the family. That's what they're looking to do. It's just their methods might be maybe outmoded, outdated, that sort of thing. Their intentions, I think, are good. And again, their concerns. They're concerned about material things. But again, I think all the people involved here, what they're all really looking for is harmony, not just, I think, people being there, children, family, business partners, income, but they want the harmony as well. And that's what they're really seeking. And that's the real wealth here, more than the paychecks that might be coming out of here. Again, I think the work income situation is just kind of the backdrop or potentially catalyst for bringing all this other stuff up to the surface. Because again, if everything was flowing smoothly, then this person would have no motivation to look for another way to do things or go deeper within themselves and come back with new methods or that sort of thing. But yeah, I think there still might be some ongoing issues with the parents, but I think it's going to be softened because again, Jupiter, even though it's in the 12th house, it is Jupiter. It's a benefic planet, and it's in this parivartana. So again, I think it's going to be a slower process for the parents or grandparents to get on board with this new mindset or lifestyle or what have you. It's just they might be a bit set in their ways. Is what I'm seeing here, and that's okay. But I think as long as the family is back together and happy and harmonious, then they might be slow to take to it, but be like, okay, if it works, it works, sort of thing. But again, the end results are getting back to the main theme of this moment in time and what I'm seeing with the natal chart as well as subcharts is that the real wealth here is about harmony, compassion, and relationship. So it's not just about having a family, but having a family that works well together, or not just having a partner or spouse, but having a really well working, harmonious relationship. So that's what I see through all of this. So there you have it. Analysis for the new moon coming up on November 13th, just around the corner here. Again, all of my teaching videos on the subject of Vedic astrology are in my concepts playlist. If you're interested in individual birth chart readings, I offer those on Zoom. You can email heartlightastro@yahoo.com for more information. I also have another YouTube channel on natural medicine, which includes other Vedic arts such as Ayurveda and yoga, as well as other paradigms of medicine such as homeopathy and naturopathic medicine. And that the name of that channel is called Nature Source Care. So you can find that if that's interesting to you. If you happen to be celebrating Diwali, I wish you well for that. And otherwise, as always, I hope you found this interesting and helpful as you navigate the energy cycles of your life. So until the next one, take care. Namaste.